Battle of the Challenges with Vincent Cloud.
David Lauer.
DJ Matty Nice.
And look who came crawling back. I figured you...
I had a lot to say.
You slipped off and to stay with Bananas and Nani at that exile house. That's what I assumed happened. And then Bananas is like, listen, we're going to leave. Wait a couple days, then you leave, so it doesn't look suspicious. But here you are, Matt. DJ Matty Nice.
I've got a lot to say.
Yeah.
So
he's coming in hot. But cool your jets.
I thought I did a good job in Matt's absence.
Oh my God, Dave! I didn't know you were here.
I thought I was the MVP of this season, much like Wes was. But then Bananas or Matt freaking left, and now he's back.
Just to steal the show.
Yeah.
From Wes.
Yeah. Now you got to kick Dave out.
Knock me down.
Yeah.
Put me in my place.
I don't know. Let's just talk about the final. Then we could get into the more.
Yeah.
Like, we'll look back at the season as a whole, and then we could discuss.
I like this.
So let's start with the final, which to me, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't really care for it. Did you like it?
I liked parts of it.
I liked parts of it. I mean, it was I don't know. It didn't look like they struggled as much in other finals. I'd say in the medium of hardness, it's between one of the shorter finals and not one of the mega finals. Even though it was a 2-day final,
yeah,
it really didn't look like one of the mega finals. And maybe that's because they had to condense it down into one episode for both days.
Yeah, I feel like if it was a longer episode, they would have shown more footage of them just sitting there tired and completely burnt out. And we saw some of those scenes, but we didn't see enough where it made it seem like it was super strenuous.
We didn't have the Zach meltdown or anything like. Well, there was something close, but I guess.
Oh, nah. I wouldn't say so.
I was waiting.
I don't know. I felt Zach's meltdown was bigger than Jay's.
Well, that's what I meant. That's what I'm saying.
Tear rolling down his cheek.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the guy. He's got the body of just a guy off the streets. They're like, hey, come get on the show. I doubt even worked out for this thing. You know, they just kind of scooped him up. He was fresh off of Real World. So as soon as filming stopped with that, they're like, hey, come over here to Panama. But we'll get into that later. Just talk about who's in the finals. And to me, that is just a huge reason why I didn't really care for this one too much. Sarah and Jordan, I feel a certain way about both of them, which is not very good. Teresa and Leroy, who are just thrown in together, but that's fine. I like Leroy, but I had no faith in him in this thing going in. Like, I've said that for a couple episodes now. And then Teresa, who knows? This is the first one, and she's been doing really good up until this point. And then you have the rookies, Jay and Jenna, who everyone's like, they're the layup. And not only is the booking for the final odd, but now the previous power couple gets to choose the advantage at the very beginning with the helicopters jumping off into the water and shit. I mean, how'd you guys feel about this? Dave, you felt like it was great?
It gave them a slight lead, but it seemed only by a matter of a minute or two. When they had the shot of them, all three in their boats going towards the shore, they were fairly close distance from each other. I don't feel like it gave them a huge advantage.
Oh my God. You don't think so?
I don't know. Editing, you never know. You can't tell. They could have edited it. There was one shot where obviously Leroy and Teresa were way in the back, but obviously they were having issues because the person in the back is supposed to steer, the person in the front is supposed to do the power.
Yeah, Teresa doesn't know this. Well, neither does Leroy. It's not like he's like, hey, you're in the back, you're supposed to steer.
He was short-handed his right-hand stroke, so he's pulling hard to the left. Teresa wasn't steering. Because in the back you got different paddle moves that you can do to steer the boat, or the back end of the boat this way and that way.
Leroy's so much bigger. He's got so much more power behind his oars.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, issues there, I get it. And I get the reasoning for putting them the way they did. Why not put this physically stronger team in the way back, especially somebody that, hey, you're going to have to swim and Leroy's terrible at it.
And everyone leading up to this, and by everyone I mean other fans, other people with these strange opinions, where they're like, Leroy is going to be so awesome in this final. Just you wait, Vince.
But they still got to do the checkpoints. They got to do the puzzles. They got to do, which isn't exactly the strong suit.
And everyone knows that kayaks, swimming, heights, those are in finals. And everyone knows Leroy isn't good at them. And they're just like, but wait until he's in a final. I'm like, it's the same thing, but just sandwiched together.
The final does not consist of a hall brawl, you know?
You're never physically attacking someone in a final, ever. There's
that's
never
what
been a final
Leroy
like that.
excels at.
And he can excel at the physical parts in between the mental checkpoints, but the checkpoints they got puzzles, they got food eating contests.
Odd skills that you have to do, like tossing rocks and shit like that.
Yep.
I guess what I'm saying is that the booking's odd. The fact that producers all of a sudden let Sarah and Jordan have an advantage, it's never been heard of. You go into a final fresh. You're on an even keel at the very beginning.
And I thought they took a lot of the excitement out of the episode by not having them be there at those breaks, being right on top of each other. You don't get that sense of excitement. I mean, they were ahead the whole time.
They would show up at a checkpoint, and then they're like, oh shit, Jordan and Sarah are gone. They were just ghosts throughout this entire thing, which it was, again, no surprise, because I'm like, Jordan and Sarah are a superior team in this final. This is supposed to be a 2-episode final. Every final lately is 2 days long, and thus 2 episodes long. Instead, it's 1 episode. Why? Because it was a fucking slaughterhouse. Jordan and Sarah, they had no competition.
It wasn't exciting at all.
Not in the first day, but the second day.
With them having such a lead, like, constantly, producers then have to put in these confessionals that really kind of like, hey, sit you down, audience. This is about Jordan and Sarah. I hope you guys know this. Look at Sarah. She used to be 200 pounds once. Oh my gosh, right? And Jordan, he doesn't have a hand. Show everybody your non-hand, Jordan. Like, there was like this gratuitous shot, I felt like, where they're like, hey, there.
They had to drive the point home, He's a guy with a disability, and they kind of played that a lot, where they always mention that.
See him being proud of it. I mean, for a guy that does that and is a kick ass at these challenges and do stuff, I could see it.
It's like, it was very American Idol to me this whole time, where it's like, Sarah, why should you win? And tell us again, but at a different, is your family sick? Anything like that? She's like, no, I was once heavy and now I'm thin. In fact, I've always been thin since Real World and onward. So the fact that I was once this way years ago and you've never seen it, we're going to bring it back up for this final. It's like, that's clearly what they had to do, because it was such a slaughterhouse all the way through. They're just like, we're going to have to give it some zazz. We're going to have to put some drama into this stuff. And that's why you never got a sense of time in this thing. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that. There's no timestamps throughout this entire thing.
They hardly ever do, though, on any of these types of challenges.
No, last year might have been one of the first ones they ever did, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And they always should.
Because a lot of times the front teams are so far ahead.
And that's why I was so annoyed with them getting to decide who gets an advantage at the very beginning. Why do that? Jordan and Sarah are the superior team. Producers should know that. Or I'm just smarter than the producers. I might be. I actually produce my own challenges sometimes, and I have to think of the worst case scenario and how the challenge could continue to work on that worst case scenario. And they prepared for nothing. We'll see it throughout the checkpoints where they're like, half an hour's up. I heard people say that it took hours for that stone throwing competition.
Throwing the rock up full of water.
Yeah,
you gotta eat a tube of
caviar.
And then run back, grab more stones, and then they were like, 30 minutes is up. I heard that it was actually like a couple hours. Isn't that fucked up? Where the producers like, oh shit, they're not going to be able to do this challenge. Call it.
I thought they would have like bumped the line up 5 or 10 feet and get them a little
every
closer,
time,
maybe.
Closer,
if they're just sitting there trying to do it for 2.5 hours and they're like, well, we're out of the tubes of caviar. I'm sure they only had a certain amount. They were probably running out of them.
All right, so they jump from the choppers. Let's just go at it chronologically a little bit. Sarah and Jordan, they get to the beach really quick. Jay and Jenna are not that far behind them. Or, well, I guess they aren't, because Leroy, I couldn't tell, actually. Either way,
nobody
Jordan
was
and
on
Sarah
the beach at the same time, and they had to change clothes.
I guess this is checkpoint number 2, and this is mind games, a puzzle, and Sarah, who, god damn it.
I don't know why you hate her so much.
Oh my god, it's awesome. All right, I don't hate her.
She's a likable person. She's annoying.
She is a ray of sunshine. I thought about this. I was going to say this at the very end of the episode, but I guess I'll just say it now, Dave. That in the end, she wins. And to be honest with you, it was a really horrible, cynical season. Have you noticed that? Where like Zach hates Janae and Adam hates Brittany, and everyone hates each other. Bananas hates
Brittany
Wes.
Was funny. Zach hating Janae was tragically terrible.
That was cringeworthy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't dislike Zach, but coming into that, I mean, some of the things he said about, like, come on, man. You're just going to get berated for the...
Alright, so mind games. And Sarah is jumping up and down, doing cartwheels, yanking on her pigtails. She's so excited to do this puzzle where it's basically Hangman. they say it's a 5-word sentence. They even show you the blanks, so it's like, okay, the first word is a 3-letter word, and so on. So it's not that difficult. Hangman is not that difficult. Anyone disagree? No? Yes?
You do have to pick out words, but I mean, it could be tough. She made it look really easy. I think I would have been able to do it and I would have finished it, but I'm sure she would have beat me by a couple minutes. But I don't feel like it was super easy.
The fact that it was in a Hangman style, that kind of annoyed me because to me it felt too easy, but at the same time, thank God it was.
Hangman, it's not like you say I and then all the
eyes
pop
fill
up,
out or anything like that.
You got to put pair together words on your own.
Yeah.
So they take off, and Jenna and Jay are running, right? Or Jay's running. Jenna starts to slow down. She's starting to bitch. She's starting to say, like, Jay, just stop. What the heck? Like, she's just getting really annoyed with Jay because he's just like, come on, we're in a race. Let's go.
Yeah, he was saying $250,000.
Which at this point was no chance.
There still was a chance. They were in it. They were far behind in third place, but
completing the...
You still have a whole nother day coming up where you could.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you get through that first day.
They had a chance. But they would wait until later until they blew it.
I felt like either way they were going to either give up or get DQ'd because it would get too late in the day. Like, that's how I really felt about Jay and Jenna, because right here is when Jenna's just, like, walking. She hasn't even gotten to the puzzle yet. She's already bitching and saying, like, Jay, you're being annoying because you're in a competition and you want to win.
I feel bad for Jay at this point because he was trying to coach her up. He's doing well, and he's made it all the way to the final. Now he wants to prove himself, and he's being kind of held back. So
I couldn't feel these emotions with you because I watched the reunion before I finally just watched the final with you guys. I couldn't go through that roller coaster.
Oh, well, you should. It was something else.
Because if I was you guys, and I'd seen it, not knowing that they had DQ'd, I would have been like, Jenna, you know, what the fuck? Why are you walking?
And her attitude in general. She makes a quip, or pretty funny, about, like, 15K, like, buy a scratch off, you know? I'm like, that's pretty funny. But her whole attitude just sucked. I'm just like, you shouldn't even be on TV. So it was a weird feeling when they weren't all of a sudden. Spoiler alert. So again, this just really annoys me. Like, Leroy and Teresa, they're finally coming up from the beach and catching up to Jay and Jenna, and Jenna's just like, well, let them pass us. Like, she doesn't want to run any quicker or anything like that. So they pass them, and in the meantime, Sarah and Jordan are running. Producers are like, hey, Sarah, why should you win again? And she's like, because I was DQ'd twice because of partners. And then they show shots of Vinny getting kicked out, and then Trishelle getting kicked out, and Sarah getting the boot. But I was like, well, why don't you show her final losses as well? Why don't you do that? Why don't you show her loss in the elimination round in a puzzle where she was like, when I win this shit against these rookies, Janae and Jasmine, and then show her get eliminated?
Or
why not
final
do that? I understand why you can't do it, but...
When she puked her guts out, couldn't complete a final.
Cutthroat. Why don't you show a shot of Cutthroat or a shot of the Ruins? Battle of Seasons as well. That's how I
don't get why you're so upset and like why they have to show clips of them losing in the past. This is a new season. You don't need to keep showing what happened in the past.
But he's saying that's what they did because they were saying she got DQ'd, she never had a chance. But she did have her chances before. Trudge to the final. We got 10 minutes of final time.
All right.
Get to the next check.
So Leroy and Teresa do get to the puzzle. Leroy says, you know what? I'm not even paying attention. I'm just looking at the rocks. So right then and there, I'm like, see, Leroy, thank you for being in this final. Thank you. He'd be relying on Nia at this point. And he even says, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. Classic. They solve the puzzle. They go on. Jay and Jenna are there. They see that Leroy and Teresa get it. They take off. And Jay makes this little remark like, can we go look at it? Kind of like, I'm joking, but not really. But then the producers didn't say anything. And Jenna, I don't think she could give a shit less about Jay.
They missed a golden opportunity.
She could have looked. Right?
Yeah. They did it before, and they never put a kibosh on it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really confused. I was like, he made the joke like, hey, I wonder if we can go look at it.
But
like, why don't you go do it?
He's never seen a challenge before. What if he was like, that's an instant DQ? He didn't know.
How the fuck
he didn't know.
Not know?
What do you mean? He's never seen a challenge before. How could you know? Like, what if that's like a deadly thing that like, oh my god, when you cheat, TJ steps up and is like, pack your bags, get out of here.
I mean,
get the fuck out of here. You know,
yeah, I don't know the timeline, like how much time he had to prepare for the show. Like if he just got called up, like, hey, we want you to be the rookies on the challenge, get over here and fly over in 4 days. He's not gonna have enough time to freaking watch
scour through every
seasons
season
of the show. So, I mean, I guess maybe he just didn't have a chance to catch it.
I don't know, poor Jay. He just doesn't. At this point, poor Jay, I'm saying. Not later. Then you cut to, again, Sarah and Jordan in the lead. Like, they're always going to be in the lead. They're always going to get to the checkpoint first. Spoiler alert. This felt like the producers had no money and they had to film it guerrilla style. They were just like, okay, now the final's going to go in the backyard of these people because they were constantly jumping fences, getting into livestock, like literally residential houses in the distance. I'm like, you guys don't have permits to do this, do you? I really feel like you guys are just running through this thing. Don't flip your lid. Checkpoint number 3. And it's basically Flip Cup, kind of a glorified version of it. Is that how you play Flip Cup? I mean, can you do it with just the lids?
No,
Or no?
I've never
You do
seen
It's
it.
just
it.
the cups?
The cups. You drink the cups.
There are lids to these cups?
They were
In this
coasters.
one.
They were trying
Coasters.
to put coasters.
Yeah. You have to first down 2 glasses to start. I don't know. I heard that this stuff was like vinegar and fish oil.
Shit ton of fish eggs.
Raw, yeah.
Fairy piss. Minotaur semen.
All your imagination and whatever, basically your worst nightmare, like whatever your mind, because they didn't even say what it was. Your mind's just gonna race, right? That in fact might have made it worse for people, especially for Jay, where he's just like, my body's rejecting it, because at this point it's mind over matter. You said that, David. I keep pointing at people, and I'm like,
you say my name all weird.
because I realized
David.
that whenever I point to someone, I'm like, you said that, and I don't let you answer. But then they're like, the listeners are like, who said that earlier, Vince? You fucking asshole!
But then
Like,
you cut me off before I could even state my point on it. We just had to
listen,
move
I am
on.
terrified that this is a triple threat podcast. I'm like, just fight for your hours, Vince, because you don't know when they're gonna take it over.
But it is mind over matter. He couldn't drink it, but it's like you just have to control your body and be at a mental state where you're not going to let that get in the way.
Mhm.
No matter how gross it is, you're going to suck it up and just do it anyways.
Gross.
To him, it was not an option.
Well, he did say from day one, our worst weakness was eating and drinking stuff.
But he blamed Jenna. In
When?
the previous episode, he said Jenna is going to lose this if we have to eat anything bad.
Oh,
And he
right.
said, have you ever
Ah.
seen the finals before?
She didn't want to eat the little shrimp or
Yeah.
something like that? Yeah, that's right. The only reason why they even got to this flip cup point is because the time was allotted at the puzzle. The rock puzzle. They never solved it. They were like 30 minutes. The producers were like, holy shit, they're not going to finish this fucking puzzle. So just tell them in 5 minutes their 30 minutes are up. So now Leroy and Teresa, they're doing flip cup.
She did a good job.
Yeah.
I was impressed by her. She was just down on it.
Yeah.
I mean, she was throwing up and it was making her really sick, but she would still just keep drinking it. Her mind was in it to win it.
Jay and Jenna make it.
Yeah. Jenna downs about half, and Jay takes like maybe a couple of sips. When he's thrown up already, he's able to swallow some more. And he's like, all right, it's down. But then immediately just throws it back up. At this point, though, he already knows Jenna is a horrible competitor. She almost wanted to quit a couple miles back.
Yeah, just jogging up the hill.
I'm trying to put myself in his little shoes as much as possible, and maybe he's like, hey man, my fucking stomach, this is really horrible. Not only am I doing this horrible gross shit, which really I don't like eating or swallowing weird shit, but my fucking ex-girlfriend over here, who's not giving me anything at all, is like, I don't care if we win or lose. She's standing there saying it. She's like, you want to quit or not? Because I don't care.
Totally indifferent.
Like, she said that.
Yeah, she was indifferent.
Like, she was surprised that they were even there in the finals. She's like, wow, this is cool that I somehow got this far to know doing it my own.
I don't think she once said this is cool about it. I don't think she acknowledged it. I felt like she really could care less this entire time. Now, her reasoning was that because she really does truly still hate Jay for cheating on her for 2 years, and that's valid. But, like, shit, producers, you put in a woman who was, like, clearly, like, she's like, no, I don't like him. I'm not going to play this up for the camera.
So much to say on this, but you have to remind me.
All right.
TJ!
Oh, yeah, right. So TJ shows up.
My favorite part of the episode, by the way.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, how'd it go then? I mean, I feel like I'm doing all the talking because I'm
You
not
are.
letting you guys talk.
TJ just starts ripping on Jay, and I felt like TJ was doing it as a reverse psychology moment, like ripping into him that maybe he won't quit and that he'll keep going on, but Jay says he can't do it. and TJ lights him up.
If TJ's trying to do the reverse psychology, then he's insane because he keeps on trying the same thing with the same results. He never convinces someone to stay in the game. Has TJ ever talked anyone off the ledge? No, they jump, right?
Yeah.
They quit. They're like, no, we're going to quit.
I'm, like I said, competitive person. People that quit to me are the same. I feel the same way that TJ does. Give it your all if you're gonna do it, especially if somebody's relying on you, a teammate or something like that. If you're not giving it your all, I understand the shit's gross. Get it down.
Even if it's just 2 glasses and then you couldn't go anymore, I'd at least respect you for
barely
really trying.
He didn't even try. I think, like you said, he was demotivated by his partner's lack of enthusiasm. She wasn't exactly motivating him either. She's not like, come on, you pussy, let's go. Let's get it down. Let's drink it. We want to win this money.
She was a good teammate. She would have drank a whole glass and been like, hey, I did it, now
like
you
you
do
said,
it.
she's like, I don't, just, are you going to call it? Basically. Of course, since he's the one that do it, he's going to get all the ire from everybody.
So TJ's like, okay, fine. But I'll just say that they were right to keep you in this game because you guys were terrible. Like, you guys are horrible. Like, what are you doing? Jay says, okay, we are going to quit.
Yeah, he really ripped into him.
Well, that was the extra scene that you didn't see until just now.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he was saying, but basically it was like Jay was saying, yes, I understand, sir. Yeah, totally, right?
TJ just had line after line of just putting them down.
And even Jay's like, hey, leave her out of this. It's just me. But TJ's still like, no, you guys are layup, both of yous. To me, TJ's putting too much of his input in the show. He's not even that great of a host to begin with. Oh my God, here comes the fucking hate.
I love TJ.
I don't have a problem with him. I like him.
I like TJ.
Aren't there so many other hosts that are just like awesome? You want a host of a challenge? Watch Redneck Island with Steve Austin. Now that's a fucking host. TJ is like, hey guys, I've been smoking weed with my friends, skateboarding, I've been hanging out in the hotel. I got these lines that I could never fucking remember because they'll overdo my voice like this. And then guys, remember that you can't jump rope because that'll DQ you. So do you remember what I said about the jump rope? He doesn't do his lines well.
They're not going to get Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I would love that, though.
But, like, what kind of host would they be able to get other than maybe a past contestant, maybe?
I mean, Kenny would be an awesome host.
Okay. So if Kenny was a host, which I'm sure he's not permitted on the challenge grounds anymore.
You're right.
But if they allowed Mr. Beautiful to host the challenge, he would be completely biased.
Oh, he would definitely
He would rip on Wes constantly. It's funny that you mentioned that. I feel like TJ is biased as well.
He's got his favorites. They even say TJ's got his favorites,
Like, it appears that he's even friends with Kenny and Johnny and shit. And there's been plenty of times where I don't think he likes Ty. I remember he said this one thing to Ty in his elimination. And then I remember he said this one thing to Wes. I don't know, he treated him odd. Like, he always treated like, yeah, that's right, you are eliminated. Right, guys? And he high-fives Kenny, Evan, and Bananas. Not literally, but, I felt like, hey, you guys are buddies, though. That's not fair. Like, how is that fair for a host to be friends with competitors?
Yeah, but I don't feel like it's affected the show. Or I don't want every episode, if it was a super, super biased guy, where every episode you'd be commenting on some favoritism.
Yeah, it seems like the players like him like quite a bit, too. I mean, he's been a mainstay on the show for a while.
Yeah,
I like TJ.
I like him.
I like to call that the Paula effect and the Sarah effect. Where they're like, they're here all the time. They must be great. TJ.
I like someone who isn't like trying to make the show completely about themselves or trying to put themselves
like
over
a Conan O'Brien.
Into the spotlight. Yeah. He's pretty low key, and that's what I like about him.
Yeah, he's super low key. He could blend into the background sometimes.
He's like Joe Rogan on Fear Factor.
I would prefer Joe Rogan over TJ.
Rogan would always try and motivate the people. He was always, come on, you can do it, and he would yell out.
Yeah, I would prefer that than this, like, nice. You guys sucked, you were right, get the fuck out, like, that's different. I would prefer Joe Rogan.
See, not that I would prefer Joe Rogan over TJ, that's not what I'm commenting on. I'd feel the same way too, man. So many people battled to make it to that final battle, and then these people are quitting that are there. Albeit none of their fault whatsoever that they're there in the final to begin with, because they were put there by the power players of the game.
Yeah, TJ says they were right to keep you in this game because you are layups. You guys were horrible. Okay, glad to see that you watched the show too, TJ. But it's like, I don't know. I just felt like he was overstepping his bounds a little bit. You know, if Pat Sajak was like that, you know?
I would applaud him. Pat needs to come out of his shell.
Pat used to be drunk on Wheel of Fortune. He admitted to it.
Really?
Drinking before Wheel of Fortune.
Wow, I want to watch some old episodes now.
I think that was
What
like
year are we
80s
talking?
or 90s.
All right, so holy shit. Let's just get back to the fact that Jay and Jen are quitting, right? And Jay is like, holy shit, we're going to get so much hate on Twitter. And then the producers throw their Twitter handles on the screen, which got a cheap laugh. But then I'm like, you know what? That's just encouraging fucking hate and making it more readily available to be like, hey, Jay, you fucking loser and shit like that.
Yeah,
I
but
felt it was a little juvenile to
as
do
a
it.
huge fan of Twitter, that's what Twitter is. It's where you go to bash on shit.
But if you do that, then why don't you throw in Zach's Twitter handle after he got eliminated or anything like that? Why don't you do that instead
Because
of...
they're not sound producers. They just happen to think of it as they're editing this final.
Exactly. And while they were making this fucking final, because they don't know what the fuck they're doing, here comes the get your rocks off check mark, and it's number 4, I think. And that's when you have to grab 5 rocks, run to the line, and then you have to eat a tube.
Caviar.
Caviar.
Local caviar.
I've never eaten caviar.
No, I'm not that highfalutin. The only thing close that I've eaten is maybe like cheese out of a can.
I ate sardines for a $5 bet. A whole can of sardines, non-pitted. Oh, God.
Those are like really salty
But
though,
guess
right?
what? Yeah, really salty. And I couldn't drink anything either. But I did it for $5. Jay, are you listening to me? I mean, granted, it wasn't fucking horse semen or anything like that, but it was still terrible.
You gotta toss 5 stones. Yeah, underhand, mind you. And this was a flawed design because it was impossible for people, which was an oversight. You said, why not bring the buckets closer with every 5 misses
move the
or
line
something
Move
like
the
that?
line
Or
up.
move the line
up 5 feet
Yeah.
every try.
Already, that's like quick troubleshooting for a final, which the producers don't do. I said it before, like I've tried to recreate these things for you guys. You guys have played, and I've always had to think of the worst case scenario. And because over the years, like in the first few, it was so flawed. I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of this? And you guys had to suffer through it. But...
Well, it's only their 26. So painfully obvious where they're having to get like the second tube, and then they're down in that. And it, like Sarah's vomiting. Oh, some epic vomit shots. I love it.
You like the vomit?
Yeah, it was.
You like the
some
vomit?
good old...
They win. Or no, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Gone,
Apparently.
and then they go.
They're biking. Sarah starts throwing up, and she's like, I gotta make dookie. And she went to the woods, and she shat. This is the first time I ever heard of anyone shitting in a final before. That was pretty cool.
That's surprising, though. I feel like people would be shitting all the time and doing strenuous stuff like that and eating all that gross stuff. Plus, you know, they just got to Norway like, what, 2 or 3 days ago.
Fresh food.
All this new Norwegian food.
Oh,
that
yeah.
all those bangers and mash or whatever they're eating. Is that Ireland? I don't know.
By the way, Leroy and Teresa, they do catch up, but I think that they even have the 30-minute allotted time. So they're on their bikes right behind Jordan and Sarah.
Then they go.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say, everyone who was like, oh, Leroy and Teresa, or no, Leroy especially, is going to be a beast in this final. Sarah had time to take a shit in the woods, and they still didn't catch up to them on those fucking bikes. I rest my case.
Because Leroy, he didn't do well with the swimming or the kayaking. The word puzzle, he was no help at all. That was completely Teresa. The stone, they couldn't do it, but no one else could do that either. So he hasn't really looked good at anything so far.
So we're at checkpoint number 6, and this is the rest stop, where the rules say you either lay on the bed with your partner or stand into the designated rope circles a couple feet outside of the campfire overnight. And Jordan and Sarah, they read this out loud. And yet they sit right next to the fire, take their shoes off, dry off their shoes and socks, and they even have time to like hug and talk about how, oh my God, remember when Naya and Bananas said that I wouldn't do this, and Sarah starts crying, and they
Talk
really
about all their motivation.
Yeah, and she's like, and you wouldn't know, Jordan, how it feels for someone to doubt you. That
you would never understand, Jordan, never.
So they hug it out. Again, they have all this time to have this sweet moment with each other next to the fire. Where's Leroy and Teresa this entire time?
They left and got on bikes within a half hour.
Exactly. So what the fuck is happening with all this? Finally, Leroy and Teresa do show up, and
Don't get to sit by the fire.
No, Jordan and Sarah, they get up like, oh shit, we were in our circles.
Yeah,
no, not at all. They were just kind of sitting there like, what's up? And maybe the producer was like, holy fuck, you let him sit next to the fire the entire time? That's not right.
I mean, this might have been some editing there. They might have let them warm up by the fire.
At least show
15 minutes or something, and then make them sit back in those circles. I'm hoping.
Remember, in the morning, after it's all said and done, the sun's up and shit, they have to stand in those circles. They're not allowed to go next to that fire.
And survival tips, they failed epically.
They should have gotten naked.
Down into their skivvies and used all those clothes as layers and warm together with each other's body warmth underneath it. And that's how you stay the warmest. Especially, if you have a buddy. Even if you're alone, mind you, you take your clothes off. It seems counterintuitive.
There's nothing sexual about this at all. This is all survival.
It is. They said they were so cold. Well, you know what? Strip down. Get damn near naked.
I understand if Jordan and Sarah can't because Sarah is engaged at this point, but Leroy and Teresa, just go at it for 8 hours and you'll be perfectly fine.
Leroy said later that he was standing up for the last 12 hours.
Well, there was a shot of them just standing before the sun even shined because maybe they were like, we aren't getting naked and fucking. We're shivering to death.
Well, I'm not even talking about fucking.
But
you
you're
get
laying down and resting your legs.
legs.
I'm just talking about laying down and resting your legs. Like,
Yeah.
he should have been doing that.
You cuddle. Basically,
Yeah.
That's why I can't cuddle because I get too warm when I sleep.
I thought it was a fear of commitment and intimacy, really.
And I like sleep alone. I prefer the girl just to leave. I'll just call her a taxi. As soon as I pull out, it's like, oh, I'm on the phone. Taxi.
You
gotta get here 5 minutes ago.
So
Well, actually, with my sex sessions, I probably could call the taxi beforehand and still have time.
God, what's taking those taxis so long?
It's just always a race. And I intend to win every time.
Oh, and you do.
I'm like the fastest guy you'll ever meet.
before they go to sleep and not fuck for warmth, Leroy is saying like, fuck Wes. Everyone who's done me wrong, they got their comeuppance. And you know what? I sent him home in a neck brace. And Teresa's like, he played the game. Part of it is politics. And Leroy says, you don't have to lie. But Teresa says, your best friend lied to you. Bananas lied to you. And let Jordan over there, example A is like right there, threw you in. And finally, the producers had the decency to show some flashbacks to support that fact and finally convince not only Leroy, but Leroy's fans that and Bananas fans, I guess, that Bananas and Leroy, it was a fucked up relationship. Bananas didn't give a shit.
Bananas never defended Leroy at all.
So then you might see that the wheels are turning in Leroy's head a little bit. And Leroy's saying, like, well, Wes played the political side, but look what happened to him, you know? I just don't like getting played. And he's like, I did play the game that should have been played or whatever. And Teresa said, all you did was go into domes and come out. That's all you did. You were a victim of circumstance or dumb attitude. That's not a word. He's like, I don't want to be getting played. So when all this information is stacked up next to him in this coldest point in his life, he just doesn't believe it still. He's like, no, Bananas is my friend.
Basically, he only wants to play the game where he goes into a challenge and just uses his athleticism to win, and that's it. He doesn't want to play the political side.
Nope.
And his friend in Johnny Bananas, no matter what political stuff he does, he can always talk Leroy into still being with him.
Wes didn't really play you too much. In fact, he said, take out Zach, and then we'll go to the final together. And now it's the morning. TJ shows up. He's like, all right, this is the last portion of the final. Sarah and Jordan, since you guys mastered day one and got here first by who knows how much, you guys get a 5-minute lead.
I've seen this in other challenges too, and I never agree with it. Whatever lead, when they first got there, they should have had a stopwatch. And the time that Sarah and Jordan got there should have been a stopwatch to the time that Leroy and Teresa got there. And be like, okay, in the morning you're going to get this amount head start.
But then you would run into the problem
of at the very beginning there was a head start to start with.
Yep.
So they're trying to cancel that out by no matter who did. I don't know. They're so inconsistent with their timing issues.
from a producer's point of view, you want to have the best show possible. So you wouldn't let Jordan and Sarah have the exact same lead that they got when they got to the
They need
restaurant.
drama at the end. It wasn't that close.
Why not give them just the 2-minute head start like they did to Kenny and Wes in Rivals 1?
Right.
Like, I was just like, oh, this is bullshit, but it was dramatic.
They probably just came up with that night.
And you mentioned that they were on a different trail, and we rewatched it, and there was a scene where it looked like they were neck and neck, divided by only a couple of rocks, boulders. But then later on, the very last shot, they're separated by so much that we think that they were on different trails. Is that what it was?
Yeah. And from all the angles I could see, I mean, you might have had a 30% grade, 40% grade for, Sarah and Jordan, where some of those walls that Teresa and Leroy were climbing up were pretty vertical. I mean, in comparison.
They look like different parts of terrain, different sides of that mountain. And TJ said the line at the beginning, he's like, you're going to get a 5-minute head start on this trail. As if he's saying this trail because there's a second trail, that Leroy. But the way it was edited, that whole final climb, it's hard to really tell what happened because the one shot where they're so close to each other, and then all of a sudden Sarah and Jordan are at the top, and then Leroy and Teresa are nowhere to be found. It's like, I thought they were just next to each other.
They win, Jordan and Sarah. And then they even have time to, like, hug and scream while the helicopters fly overhead, and it's an awesome shot. So they had plenty of time.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing was set up for them to win.
Why do you think it was set up for them to win?
The head start at the beginning, the 5-minute head start on what didn't look all that long. I guess maybe it's hard to tell with editing to see how long it was. She said it was 10 kilometers, 6 miles.
That's a hell of a hike. I thought it was surprising that Sarah was able to make that hike.
Yeah, it was too, especially in that
I didn't think
elevation.
she'd be able to do it.
But I thought it was all set up from even the episode before. I thought that was a big setup. Or 2 episodes prior, I should say.
Why? For what?
I think that, and here's my conspiracy theory, none of the contestants were able to watch the other ones in the challenge. I think they knew somehow prior that Sarah would put in bananas, put more drama on it, and I'm not necessarily sure that they won. Because it was such a hard one to contest who won.
That was with the ropes on the
With
side
the
of
ropes.
the building.
And nobody was able to watch. That's the thing. They even said that in that episode. You can't watch on the side. They set it up to get more drama on it, to get one of the big stars in the final elimination and get everybody riled up. But then what happened is you have a lackluster final.
Thank God this final's done because we don't have to talk about it specifically and we could just go on our tangents. But I was going to say, with them not being able to see them on the building, even when they do get to watch someone, they're not allowed to have any watches of any kind.
I feel like they could just manipulate things because you don't know if it's a 2-second difference. I mean, there's so much editing that the regular viewer wouldn't be able to say, well, this is who won. The conspiracy is to say, drum up more drama about people going into elimination.
And I thought it was weird the way they counted it and they scored it because it wasn't at Leroy and Nia. Leroy got all the way down and had all 5 ropes. Nia, I think, got to the second rope, which is a total of 7. But then Sarah and Jordan, I think they got to they both fell off 3. Well, that's only 3. That's 6 ropes total.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they ended up winning, I thought it was just weird the way that they did it
I
that
thought
way.
so too. I thought exactly, and I felt it was a setup to try to get probably the most recognizable of the last contestants, or the most likable / maybe not likable into a final elimination.
They're seen as faces in my eyes, like the good guys. The producers probably see them and say, Sarah and Jordan, they're good, so why don't we give them the win for the final?
But I don't think they would have done it on purpose if they knew they were going to throw in bananas, because I don't think they wanted bananas out of there. I think they wanted bananas there for the final. That's kind of why they had the whole exile thing, I feel like, to bring back the best team if one gets eliminated.
And it's interesting that when producers do know if they're planning on throwing bananas or not, because I think it was Bananas who said in an interview recently, producers always ask you, what are you thinking? And what, if you guys were partners, they're like, Matt, who are you throwing in? Dave, who are you throwing in? And if you were like, I'm throwing in Bananas, and you're like, I'm throwing in Jay and Jenna, the producers on camera, they're like, B.
Yeah, they gave Sarah the
cut
decision.
to Sarah immediately.
So I thought they knew that was going to happen. That's why they put him on the spot, gave the choice to Sarah.
Why want that? Why would they want Bananas to get knocked out? Because it seemed like they just went through a whole lot of work to get him back.
To drum up more drama for it. I mean, you look at the last people that are in there, and they're not the ones that have been getting all the headlines all season, the people that are creating the most drama, the most waves. And then all of a sudden you got a very controversial move with a highly popular / dispop. He's either hated or loved.
Twitter blew up because of Sarah's decision. So producers knew, like, they're like, oh, this is going to be the hot button. Like, let's go with Sarah's decision. Yeah, they could be like, oh, Johnny Bananas.
Bananas has been nonstop about, how screwed over and hurt he was, and he's really played it up.
Yeah,
how
to this
he's
day.
so disrespected, and it was like, it's kind of just her playing the game, but he's super offended.
Well, let's go to the reunion, because that was the first topic in the reunion. Well, they obviously congratulate Sarah, and then they obviously talk about the controversial decision that happened with Sarah on up Bananas. And, at first I kind of thought Bananas was being a bit bratty about it, obviously being a sour fish about it. But someone put it in perspective and said, he lost out possibly $125,000 because of it. So, yeah, somebody's going to be salty about that. Whenever money comes into play, people get very greedy and get very defensive.
He is stomping around like this is his first or second time or something like, or Sarah, who's never gotten a win, and she's like, oh, what the fuck? No, he's won 5 times, and he's making a fuss to this very day. You watch Reunion, that's filmed like a good month or so previously, but he just had that interview on AfterBuzz where he tried to defend himself and talk about his fake x-rays and shit like that, and he was still pissed. It's just that he's not a gracious winner. Remember when CT won and he came back in free agents and he grew the beard? He was just humbled, right? I mean, he was still CT, but just stoic. You were just like, this is a man you see before you. He's won and he's graduated and all this other shit, But Bananas is still the same frat boy I met in the Duel 1.
Yeah, it's nice when somebody loses if they show a little humility.
He has been a humble loser in previous seasons. This is the first time I've actually seen him. Well, when he got lost in Cutthroat, he was extremely humble. He didn't say, this is a bullshit elimination twist that they put in here with CT, especially with Tyler being twice his size. When he went out on the Duel, he was extremely humble. Rivals 2, he didn't throw a fit about it. What was the other one where he made it to the final that they didn't win? With Susie on his team.
Oh, Inferno 3.
Inferno 3. Didn't throw a fit there. This is the first time I've actually seen him throw. So maybe you're right. Maybe over the years he's growing where he feels a sense of entitlement.
Oh, absolutely.
That
his ego is insane.
Yeah.
His sense of entitlement.
It could be that, or maybe he really did feel betrayed, or maybe a combination of both. Maybe he thought that, him and Sarah had like a friendship. And that's the thing, he's talking, he's like, Sarah, we go rock climbing outside of these challenges. I introduced you to my hairdresser. And then I was thinking to myself, you got a hairdresser? So I think that maybe it was a little bit of both. Maybe he really did feel betrayed. And people bring up the Paula thing. I don't think he 100% had a hand in that, but he takes a lot of the blame for a decision that Kenny and Derek helped Evelyn make that decision.
He takes that blame because he does not acknowledge it.
Well, right. I'm saying, but Kenny and Derek were just as much proprietors.
Yeah, but they're not around anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying.
But
that was the only time he really screwed somebody over.
No, he's even admitted that he screwed people over. He just hasn't screwed Evan, Kenny, or Derek.
The people that were in his alliance.
Yes, but even if Paula was told that she was in the alliance. In the end, though, his true alliance is his boys. Going back to when he said that Sarah and him are friends and they go rock climbing, Sarah brought this up. That is always maybe a couple weeks before we start a challenge. So then he's like, hey man, didn't we climb together? And so this challenge is going to be fun, huh? He just kind of sets up this kind of weak-ass alliance right before going into it. A couple weeks. Bananas is very smart. He's a very gifted physical competitor, but he's also very strategic, more than people give him credit for. And sometimes it's hard to see because he's got this dumb frat boy mentality that you can't be like, no, there's no way he's that smart, but he is.
And he's cunning and he's ruthless. I will give you that. And you got to be kind of on these things. And I'm not saying Sarah's decision was wrong. I like Sarah's decision. It was the smartest decision she could have made. It's the 2 strongest teams that she's going to face in the finals against each other. Yeah. Somebody's going down. He has to know it was the right decision for her to make.
If Sarah would have allowed Bananas into a final, he would have won, and then all the hate Sarah would be receiving right now is how she's such an idiot for allowing that.
Yeah.
And Jordan, too, because he actually wanted to compete against Bananas in the final, which is admirable, but dumb.
I guess I don't get all the hate that he gets.
Who?
You know, I mean, I
Bananas?
get right now he's overreacting. He's pissed off. He didn't win. This season, he was a great partner to Nani. He supported her completely, even when she fucked up in the first elimination. He didn't scream at her. They went in the exile. They were supportive. The whole time, he was a very supportive partner.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I don't know. Maybe people are just tired of seeing him time after time.
When I saw Bananas coming back, I was like, oh, if there's any way it could end up with like Wes, Leroy, and Bananas all in the same final, that would just be epic.
It would.
I guess I pat the producers on the back for trying to make that happen, kind of half-assedly. Maybe that's what they were trying to do by getting them back.
And they could have
so
done
they could be in the final, but they didn't.
They could have done it
well.
if they would have executed the exile correctly. Having the final exile be between Bananas and Banani and Zach and Johnny. They could have gone one more elimination, which wasn't going to be fucking Wes. He was going to use the layup team as his final elimination. He's guaranteed a spot in the final. You bring back the final exile team, and you got a stacked final of good competitors and people that truly dislike each other. I mean, they do not like each other.
That would have been
in
amazing.
Personal life or in the show.
Wes, Teresa in there, Bananas and Nani. In the middle, Leroy and Naya. Naya hating Bananas but loving Wes. Leroy hating Wes but loving Bananas. That would have been a team divided. That would have been just so interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I really like that little
part. Both girls dislike Nani.
But you know what? Producers, they can't prepare a final. And they can't. This season was really weird overall.
They didn't execute it correctly. They could have executed the exile better.
I commend it because they didn't reuse any domes. They were all new every time. For the most part, their challenges were spot on. They were cool. They were cool enough. The one thing I didn't like was the gang up one where they throw the wrecking ball at each other. That was flawed from the get-go because just consider this, dude. If Bananas and Nani came in and instead were just hated for like, oh, fuck you guys, and it would be a gang up thing, they could still go after Bananas and Nani, right? And then you would have Bananas and Nani in another dome. So it would be like dome, 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 dome.
I think they knew that just once Bananas got back in the house. I've only started watching this show this season, but I just found it very odd, and I still find it odd that everyone loves him so much that like he was gone, and while he was gone, everyone seemed like they didn't care for him, and he was just whatever.
They said it took the tension out the house, the edge off the house, because he plays a very partisan game. His alliance has, since way back in the beginning, it's worked well for him, puts everyone on edge. He can't talk to someone else on the other team. They did that to Laurel when she was fucking around with CT, like, what are you doing? You can't talk to him. They want to keep a tight ship in order, on the alliance. They don't want people jumping sides and jumping ship and getting feelings and emotions in the way. But it puts an edge on the house that they said when he was gone, it just took like a weight off the house.
And then once he comes back, they all just fall immediately back in love. They're like, okay, even though just episodes prior, them and Wes, like Leroy and Wes told him, hey, you'll be my number one if we take out Zach. Let's do that. And they seem to be getting along, but the second Bananas back, Leroy's is like, nope, I'm back over here with my main lover.
Here's the thing. That should speak testaments to both of those guys on leadership and charisma. That they have that much pull on other people that they can get the people to fall in line. And that's why they're both good players of the game.
But I feel like once he came back, they could have just been like, hey, you don't belong here. You're in exiles. We've already eliminated you. We're just going to throw you back into elimination and try and get rid of you. Because you don't belong here.
But it wasn't unforeseeable. Leroy and Bananas, they post workout videos together. I mean, they're friends off the show. And then
Jared, Jordan.
Yep. And I don't know. I felt that flip was a little more surprising, but
yeah. And Jordan and Sarah, it's like this entire final plus the season. I feel like they got a winner's edit where they're like, hey, these guys, look at them. They're fighting through some adversity a little bit. Remember when Jordan got mad at Sarah, and Sarah's like, I can't believe it. And then that was given so much camera time. I'm like, oh God, here we go. Watch them build a relationship and rise above all the corruption. And it's true. You said that, why do I hate Sarah so much? And then I was like, well, okay. In the end, now that Sarah has won, and so has Jordan, by the way.
This was her last year.
That doesn't matter. Are you kidding me?
And she
You're going to come at me with that?
So is she not allowed to have her moment in the sun and portray her in a good light a little bit?
That's fine. I'm just saying her reasonings for her actions do not add up. And then her saying that her and Jordan orchestrated this entire thing to get there is bullshit.
And
Good plans always have a backup plan or a change of plans. They don't matter. I feel like they played everything well.
Their plan was to survive. That's not a master plan by any
Exactly.
means.
It doesn't.
But when it came down, I mean, were they on the chopping block? We're gonna join this side now because everybody's joining it.
Yeah, they're smart enough to realize danger. Yeah, of course. I mean, bravo. And now that Sarah's won, and I had to sit through a whole final of her going, oh my god, I love puzzles, guys, and I love shitting in the woods. After it's all said and done, when I look back at the other season, it was very dark. Like, it was a very cynical season throughout. And to have the only good couple kind of there win in the end, and they did have a nice relationship. They called themselves the Wonder Twins. They were like, oh, you might as well be my sister or brother or something like that. You know, for them to triumph over all the other assholes is kind of uplifting, I suppose.
It is kind of interesting
The
how
good
it
guys
is
won for once.
where they have the best
Yeah, I
relationship,
guess.
like they're just like friendship wise, where they really get along and they really support each other in a very emotional way. A lot of times we saw that by the campfire, and like that made them a strong team. It helped build their team or help keep them together. There wasn't always infighting like with Jay and Jenna, where you're constantly trying to motivate the other person to pick it up.
With the whole winning edit and shit, you know, you can't do that with Leroy and Teresa. I mean, Leroy, to me, doesn't deserve the MVP award for this season.
Well, that's an interesting you brought that up because they had an MVP on the reunion.
I heard about this. All right, let's hear
and
it.
they said it was Jenna
Oh God.
Jenna?
because they said
She didn't do
usually girly girls come in here and I don't want to do that, and some will quit before doing stuff, and they said she just did everything that they asked her to do. I thought it was
she
weird
didn't
too.
kill her team at
I
any
thought it was
point,
weird too.
but she wasn't MVP as most valuable, like someone who goes above and beyond. She just did just good enough to stick around and not get eliminated.
No, I agree.
But that's not MVP
no
quality.
Yeah, I couldn't believe they said that either. But
You could give an
Who's your-
MVP like type
What-
performance in some of the domes that Leroy was in. Like those individual performances, he would dominate. But his overall game, if you take in the politics of the game, along with the challenges, and then just the choices, even his individual skills, if you talk about like eating stuff or drinking something, or like swimming and then biking and climbing, like he's only good in a few of those areas.
so should we do MVP? Vince, putting you on the spot. Your MVP of the season. Why?
Wes. And not just because I happen to like him. I can take a step back, even just with a watch or two, I'll notice little things that fans never bring up. But I'll bring it up. All right, so episode 1, he won, right? Episode 2, remember, technically he did win, but the cork didn't pop out. Remember that shit? Like, he actually got there first, but malfunction with production. The cork didn't pop out, so Bananas got that win. In episode 3, Teresa's hand gets mangled before they have to fall in the water and swim, and then they got second place, and Jordan and Sarah got their first win. So then episode 4, that was a bad performance. Like, he almost fucked up his back, okay? He wins episode 5. He wins episode 6. His alliance member, Jay and Jenna, win episode 7. In episode 8, Leroy wins. Wes convinces Leroy to throw in Zach and Jonette. He's winning throughout this entire fucking thing until the twist. I feel like he deserves it because he played such a good, solid game. And you could say, oh, maybe it's Jordan, maybe it's Leroy. There's a lot of Leroy MVP nominations getting thrown out there. They're like, it wasn't he killed in those domes. I'm like, yeah, those domes are a punishment, by the way. You get in domes because either you're in last place or you're sent there. And did anyone think that Leroy was going to lose in a dome? No. He was used as an assassin. Whoever you want, put Leroy in there, right? Leroy and Nia, they won 1 challenge, and they lost 2. He quit on the Wrecking Ball challenge thing because he was like, oh, Bananas and Jordan, I trust them. So he jumps.
That was a dumb strategic play. There's 4 teams at that point, or, 5 teams at that point. I guess they could have put Jay and Jenna in, but they didn't.
I'm just saying, it's like
to
it
play
was a bad
devil's
idea.
advocate for West being MVP. It was a very Peyton Manning like season. He was great throughout the whole regular season. that twist came, but him going against Leroy, he got dominated so hard. That was such a letdown of a performance.
But it wasn't a surprise, though. Leroy was never going to lose a single physical dome.
There's nobody there.
But Wes,
CT was
if
gone.
Wes was an MVP, he would have put on a better performance. I'm not saying that he should have won it, because he was definitely at a disadvantage, but he could have done a lot better than just jumping and diving at his ankles.
So who's your MVP of the season?
Yeah, Dave.
I'm a little torn. To me, it's probably is Wes. Anyone you bring up, there's too many big faults to him. Wes did such a good job all around. He was very good. There's no weak points. Like, I want to say, like, Sarah and Jordan as a team, they always did a good job all season. It seems like there are different decisions at different points that were possibly a little sketchy decisions, but in the end they worked out, so they were the right decision. Leroy, he just completely left the political side of the game out of it, and it just relied on his athleticism. So that's not an MVP type season.
So you're saying Wes as well?
Yeah, but I don't.
You can go with. I think we can give him Sarah and Jordan if he wants to.
Well, I was gonna say, I think there should be MVP males and MVP females, and in this case, I'm gonna have to begrudgingly give it to Sarah.
Yeah.
Because Teresa did a very good job, but
she didn't lead that team. Sarah led her team. She was in fact the only woman of the entire challenge cast that led her team, that led the political decisions on her team and led the strategic decisions on her team.
Very good.
Maybe not the most physically gifted in some of the areas, but they did well in most missions. They went in against Zach.
Jordan always impressed me, because I was like, oh, he has one hand, he's not going to be as good in some of these things. Like him swinging the sledgehammer, he dominated in that.
The valid MVP candidate for female.
For female. But for male, who do you think?
I'm going to go completely wacky here and go with Ryan Knight.
Okay. Oh, all right.
His one-liners were spot on this season. He was fucking hilarious. He was just a complete asshole.
He wasn't a physical threat by any means.
I mean, his one-liners were just...
I want to give it to Knight, huh?
Well, you guys are talking about
that's
credit to West. And
I do feel like we need to revise the name of this award.
Mine's the Honorable Mention Award. No, MVP definitely got to be Wes.
He's supporting role.
Yeah, for males and Sarah for the females. I gotta give it to both of them. Wes played a great game. He just got screwed by a twist in the end.
You're a Bananas fan, so I'm sure that's hard for you to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, he did not have his best game. He made political blunders. He didn't help. But I mean, he definitely should have taken Wes when well, it was against the team that Wes would have came back from anyways, and Wes won at the perfect time.
So what other awards can we give away?
Well, Teresa would definitely get like a Best Supporting Actress award, or
for being
Challenger
the best
award.
Physical female.
Yeah. So she was a
workhorse. She did very well.
Now here it is. This is perfect. I was gonna have this whole segment, but I'm like, no, this is such a long podcast as it is. I was gonna have my own equivalency of the Oscars, but for the challengers, where it would be Best Male Challenger and Best Supporting Male Challenger. Best Female Challenger, Best Supporting Female Challenger. So in that case, we said that Teresa should get something. She would get Best Supporting MVP. You know what I mean? So it would be Sarah and then Teresa. Wes, who gets the second award for the males? Would you get it to Leroy then? Or he just had to muscle his way through it, and then in the end, shivering in the dark, he's like, I played the game. I did it. You know?
I don't know. Jordan maybe for Best Supporting? He did win.
Didn't you feel that Jordan all of a sudden turned into like a upstanding gentleman, like how he protected Sarah?
It's all about the edit too.
Yeah. Oh, of course. I don't like Jordan.
From everything I've seen, I find him as a likable guy. I remember the
But you didn't see him last season.
Yeah.
But in Rivals 2, he was a likable guy. And then last season...
But there wasn't like a whole lot of good storyline drama in this season. It was the biggest storyline to me was just
I think it's
Bananas and the whole Exile. Yeah.
A lot of it has to do. A lot of these new people are just not.
They don't want to play the political side of the game.
Well, not that. That's true. They don't want to play the political side, but they're not that interesting. Like some of these other characters that came before them are, stand out.
By the way, we're gonna continue on with this weekly podcast. The next season, the duel. Correct?
The duel.
I wanted to do the ruins, but you said it's so lopsided.
It was, but it had good storylines. Fresh Meat 2 obviously was probably my favorite.
Very Game of Thrones like.
Yeah, it was.
Sweet. But I think I'm gonna go with the duel because that probably has by far the best cast.
Just stacked.
And it's such a good idea where it's like everyone for themselves and shit like that.
And Wes is a sneaky little bit. He convinced.
Hey, don't ruin anything.
Oh, yeah. I can't. I want to say it. Well, I can't say it now.
No.
No, hang on.
Because
let
Dave-
me
no.
plug my ears and hum.
No. I'm on this.
I thought it was great.
No, don't. No,
Okay,
not even because we're gonna cover it. All
Oh, you
right?
guys are gonna watch it and then cover it?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. He's never watched it before. He doesn't know.
Yeah, you need the fresh take.
If you really want to start it, you should start it in chronological order for Dave, so he can see the transpiration of events, especially between how the JK formed, how Wes came back in, how Kenny and him, and then Fresh
So-
Meat 2, where it really came to a head between those two.
First season, then to start with, the beginning is the duel. They're all new and they'll all get to know each other. They'll all have these interactions that will ripple over the years. But yeah, I don't know what else to add to this, really.
Oh, I wanted to touch. They did have the Zach and John A. Talk about Zach's
what?
treatment and
Swamp donkeys? Was that?
that was brought up. He says, I don't even know what that means. It was just a term I've heard. I've never looked it up in Urban Dictionary.
Are you kidding?
But then they go to a cutscene where he's talking about where women were created from men, pulled from like Adam's rib, and that's why women are inferior to men.
They're less than men
Yeah.
because of that.
So obviously, and John A was
He's
just
extremely
better.
sexist, dude.
John A is extremely better. She didn't say too much, and Nani said, Zach, you need to apologize to her, and he did one of those apologies where it was like, I'm sorry you were so...
I'm sorry you were offended. I'm not sorry about what I did.
She doesn't communicate well, and
Sorry you took it that way.
Yeah.
Like, what?
and the host is like, Zach, we know you're a nice guy, but, like...
Oh my god.
It was like, I don't know, man. He seems like a pretty conceited asshole to me, but...
And I felt that it was interesting that he basically was off of any social media while the season was playing. Because,
He probably knew.
yeah, again, producers throw his Twitter handle every time he's like threatening John A with emotional violence.
Very
It's a
disappointing.
great cast. Oh, it was, wasn't it?
Well, it was a letdown. I was hoping there would be more Bananas and West going at it. And they really, they did. They had the jabs in, but Bananas was gone half the season,
Mhm.
and before he came back. And
Yeah.
But he came back and Wes was immediately gone once Bananas came back.
Yeah.
He sucked the wind out of it.
It was like Wes was standing next to the door, and when Bananas busts in, he hits Wes in the face. Like, I'm here, everybody. It's kinda like that.
So I still think they did it wrong. I think they should have waited and had that team go into the final, directly into the final.
Yeah.
You win the Exile, you win your ticket, because you're going through an elimination every week. But that means that every team that gets eliminated has a chance, unlike West did.
Yeah. Boy.
So, duel, yeah. Let's play the first episode. You got time?
I got time to wrap up this podcast, to tell you that much. So in closing, this is Vincent Cloud,
David Lauer.
Maddie Nice.
and it's been real.
There's going to be a lot of editing on that.
Oh my god, I'm in a pit so fucking bad.